Welcome to another episode of Above Average Black Men with yours truly, Christopher A. Pender Sr.
Chris Jr., where we are here to empower, inspire, and uplift the community. Jeez.
That's how you introduce yourself?
Crazy.
Wow.
Couldn't hold that one in.
That's the most energy you
man.
had, though. Like,
David Bender, like, follow,
Man.
subscribe, share.
I want to apologize to our new listeners. that's not usually how we start the show. Yo, but welcome to another episode, man. Obviously, we don't have a guest today, but we're excited about the show. We're going to talk about the mindset matters and where it comes from, because I know a lot of people think if they get money or they achieve a certain status, they move out of a certain neighborhood, that automatically everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's almost like the parent who has the kid that's always in trouble, and they move thinking they put the kid in a better neighborhood, the trouble's going to go away, but the trouble still happens.
Yeah.
Because it's their kid.
Right. And I mean, I kind of feel like with that statement, in combination of this, your mindset, we mentioned or referenced this before getting on air. Your environment, like having that notion or understanding of mind that, sometimes you may be in a bad place. When you get out of that place into a better space, again, like your mindset has to kind of change or elevate along with that, because if you're taking kind of that bad or poor mindset into this new space, I mean, it really don't matter where you at end of the day. Like, and ultimately it kind of ends to or goes to just failure, or disaster, or just hard times. So I know kind of one situation that we kind of all kind of talked about where I feel like it's kind of prevalent or out there is with the football player. I always struggle saying his name.
Aqib Talib. This one grabbed my ears. Oh my god!
He got that one just right, yeah.
Because he been saying and telling me all day, like correcting me on it. But Aqib Talib, and how he's someone that you would think kind of came from whatever space that was in Cleveland, Ohio, and ultimately you would say made it. Made it through the NFL. Had a deal to be on TV, which he had to kind of forfeit or rescind. But still having that mentality of like, you always got to be able to defend yourself, or you always got to prove that you the man, or.
But see, for me, it goes beyond defending yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like your second point where, and now females do the same thing now, where it's almost like you think the only way you can represent where you're from is to act like you still live there. And I get it, because we grew up in neighborhoods where we have to fight, we got to do certain things, and that's unfortunately that was part of the the environment we grew up in. But you move out, you move away because you're trying to get away from it,
right?
And when you move into other environments where you no longer have to do that, the sad part about it is you take that attitude, and you see it in collegiate sports. Guys get in college, they still act like they in the hood, so they end up getting kicked off of teams. You see it in corporate America. People coming there still think they out in the street. They want to curse people out because I got to give you a piece of my mind. And now you're really starting to see it in professional sports. And we talked about it. The guy who, Ridley got suspended for gambling. Betting under his own name. The Miles Bridges, man. That guy's about to sign a multi-million-dollar contract, man.
After betting on yourself,
yeah.
I mean, they were going to offer him something initially different. He turned it down. He bet on himself, played well,
Yeah.
And then for that to just happen, that situation in front of his child,
dumb stuff.
Yeah.
Like again, the mentality,
but
like
the
mindset.
But the thing about
not realizing, to be able to think like, what's on the line? Like, what do you have to prove with doing whatever it is that you thought you had to do,
Well, real quick, did we explain like the whole Aqib Talib situation?
No, but we want to get there. So you want to explain it because you've been ready to go.
This is like a couple weeks ago. It was like a youth football game. This was actually in Texas. The coach that actually passed away. His name, his beginning is Mike, but the last name escapes me. Yeah. But long story short, Mike, he ended up doing the lines. He was also the coach. He ended up doing the line because they didn't have enough people to move the chains and everything. Aqib Talib, I guess his team was losing, didn't like a call, so he started arguing with the ref. something happened. They called the game just because there was all this commotion going on. Someone kicks the ball. Mike ends up and goes to try and get it. All of a sudden, him and Akeem Talib are arguing. Mike throws them the chain thing at him, just kind of like to defend himself. And then next thing you know, you got Akeem Talib's brother coming out of nowhere, has a gun on him. And you can hear like there was like 5-6 shots. Like it's one thing if you know someone shooting in the air, it's one shot.
Well, witnesses says that Talib actually punched dude.
Yeah,
that's why he threw the chain at him.
Yeah,
witness said he actually punched him first. And the thing that you're a big football player, man, and I'm pretty sure the guy you were punching wasn't as big as you and physically fit as you are. Yeah, and but the thing is, this goes back to what we're talking about: is you're making millions of dollars now, but you got the same mentality that you had when you were growing up in the hood. And I get it, you in the hood, maybe you're in survival mode, but you're not in survival mode anymore. But then if you look back to his NFL career, because remember that he snatched the chain off of Michael Crabtree, because challenged him to a fight in the middle of a football game, national TV. National TV, you know, and Crabtree was smart enough to walk away. But so that kind of mentality gets us in trouble. And the reason behind it is what really scares me, because if you can make $1 million, which is everybody's ultimate goal, you know, but you got that same crazy mindset that even the hard as you work, it's not worth it. That little thing you got inside you is worth more than anything you did.
So I want to ask y'all a question, throw this out there, and I can probably share my thoughts as to why, but it's like, I mean, why do you think that it's like that, where kind of within our community, it almost doesn't matter at what level you get, you know, well, you almost kind of had to show that side of you to almost be kind of revered or looked at a certain way sometimes.
I'm going to start here and work backwards. And, you know, I got to get my Bible reference in. You know, the Bible says, as a man thinketh. You know, they don't change the way they think. So you grow up in, for instance, I grew up in North Philly and grew up in, well, I was talking about to somebody the other day, I got into fights and stuff growing up. Now they would shoot you for the same thing. For fighting people, some of the people that I got in some, you know, interesting scuffles with, they will shoot you now, you know, but I had to change my mindset, you know, and the first time I walked on the college campus, I remember the first practice, you know, I got a chip on my shoulder, you know, I got this schoolyard mentality, you know, and the coach is like, yo, that's not how we play here. You know, this practice, you know, this practice, I need you to, you know, bring it down a few notches. So I learned from that though, because the only other choice was to go home. But unfortunately, either some people don't have that person to say, yo, I need you to ratchet it down because this is not what you grew up at. Or to Chris's point, they still got that mentality, man, like I'm still in survival mode. So even though you're in a Fortune 500 company, even though you're in a professional atmosphere, even though you've made it by all means, you know, you still got that attitude, you know, and the problem with it is most people don't correct people like that, you know, and more people laugh at you than with you. And they're thinking people are laughing with them when they act like an idiot. They think everybody's like, oh, it's not cool. People are like, yo, what's wrong with dude? They're not going to say it to you. Yeah. And I think that's the problem. And I think what you see now, you see it in the streets now where people think my manhood is I got to shoot you. I got to stab you. You know, and I think that's become the problem. I think the problem is, one, the definition of what manhood is, you know, or womanhood, because women do the same thing. I think, too, because there's not enough people, you know, and again, you know, you got to renew your mind. And I'm not going to do Bible references, but they don't change the way they think. And they still have that same mentality. It's like, and I was laughing because I was teasing Nicole about this earlier. If you take an elephant that's a cub and you chain it to the spike, it can't break the spike. The problem is when it becomes an adult, it still believes it can't break the spike. That's why you see in the circle. Because it's ingrained in them. Is ingrained. It's not till something dramatic happens and they freak out that they realize they can break it. It's the same thing with a lion. You go be in the jungle and try to stop a lion with a whip and a chair. It's just not going to work. But you train them when they're a cub, so when they get older, in their minds, they believe those two mechanisms can stop them or harm them.
I'm not sure if I even trust that.
I wouldn't trust it either, but that's what you run into now when you get people in and out of church who have this mentality, you know, and there's church people on Sunday, they got it all together. But Monday through Saturday, man, they know every vocal word they can think of, man. They ready to hurt you. They ready to do you in because the mindset has not changed. They got different information. See, it's not about not getting information for everybody. It's how you process the information. Yeah. And are you willing to change your point of view? And that's what we struggle at.
Yeah. to Dev, I guess for you, like, why do you think it's like that, man?
I just think, and I'm not saying all black men are like this, but it's people are very emotional.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like for instance, with that whole situation in Texas, it's like you using your emotion just because you see, your brother for his first time in his life probably not getting the way he wants, and that's your reaction is to go shoot the guy in a youth football game in front of the guy's kid.
Yeah, that was the crazy part,
and not even have any type of second thought about it, man.
Like some common sense or some thought could have easily, de-escalated that situation. But to Dad's point, nowadays people don't like to, quote unquote, take that loss or take it on the chin. They always got to retaliate or do something. But people don't think about the consequences, what could happen after you retaliate.
I wanted to those are kind of some of my thoughts too, like with the emotional thing. We almost kind of praise people for being emotional and irrational and just making these crazy brash decisions. We glorify it in a sense. Like it's definitely in our music, where just the retaliation culture and just like
it's in the media period.
Yeah, media period. And to me, like I think a sign related to what you were saying, that I think something that doesn't happen enough on the opposite end of what we be praising this thing. Now, I think what defines a real man to me a lot of the time is more so the smartest guy in the room who knows the appropriate time when and when not to do things. Like not every moment is going to be like heads on, like, yo, it demands like physical force. Like, again, this is the smartest guy that can make the best decisions at the appropriate time.
But I think it's two things. One, you have to learn how to control your emotions and not how your emotions control you. We all have emotions, but you have to learn how to control your emotions. The second thing is, and I hate to keep using as a reference point, but this is a strong reference point, when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. How many people came out and thought that was he was justified? How many famous people came out and said it? Oh man, I would have did the same thing. I'm so glad he did it. How many times have we had discussion because African American females came out and said, not all, but some, a lot of them said it's about time. A black man defended a black woman. So even that mind frame is in the culture. It's in that culture. And I know if X Xavier, who was on here last week, remember he told the story about he was riding in the car with his wife and he had to make that decision. And his wife said, yo, I'm proud of you because of what. But there's not a lot of women who want to, he punked you, man. You won't let him talk to me like that. Will Smith scenario. You won't let him talk to me like that. You go out there and get shot.
And it's like that. Again, kind of goes what we were saying. It's like that. It's not. I don't know why that perception is that it makes you appear less than a man. If you can just be smart enough to be like, all right, it's okay to fight here. It's not okay to fight here. Like again, I'm not saying there's a time and a place. You know what I mean? Because there are times where people do cross that line, and you do have to step up and do what's necessary. But man, for every little thing that you just get emotional on with no regard.
But I think it comes down to knowing who you are. And, that's one thing that your mom and I, we did. We spent a lot of time pouring it into you. When you don't know who you are, you're constantly driven and moved by other people's opinion. So therefore, if Devin does something to me, in my mind, I know I shouldn't retaliate, but now here comes Chris. Man, you gonna take that, man? Right. Yo, you a punk. You gonna take that? So now I'm driven because I worry about your lady, like because I worry about what people think. So unless you got the ladies who say, "Yo, it's not worth it," you react because you worry about people watching. I mean, it's the same thing when you play sports, And I know when I played, I probably played better when I was pissed off because somebody said something to me. I'm out there, I'm playing, but somebody says something to me, it goes to a whole nother level. And my coach used to teach me, you're supposed to play like that all the time. But it's the same thing. I think it's the same thing in life. Sometimes people say stuff, and if you don't have somebody to balance it out, and if you don't know who you are, you respond. It's like football. I love the analogy in football. The first guy never gets caught. The second guy, I don't care. He done seen 15,000 football games. He done seen this happen every time. Yet he still retaliates right there in front of the official. Yeah. How many games he done seen this? So, but why? Because what people gonna think?
Like, you got to be. So, I mean, kind of be talking about this idea of mindset and what people think.
Yeah.
We're talking about it from the standpoint of present day.
Yeah.
But I always kind of like to know from your perspective growing up. Like, do you feel like
the olden days? You can say
it. Yeah, with an older perspective. But like, I always like to compare. Like,
but
is it that much different? Is it like highly more increased now? Like this idea that you had to do these things or act this way or wear this or do that.
I think there's 4 differences, in no specific order. The major difference is the consequences are a lot more severe now.
It's your life.
Back when I was growing up, you fought and it was pretty much over. Sometimes you had to fight the person 2 or 3 times because they wanted to try to get even.
Yeah, I was lifting weights for a week.
My brother then taught me a few new moves. But it was never somebody's going to shoot you dead. The second thing was, if you had like the friends I was around, they weren't going to let me do anything stupid. They weren't going to let me do anything stupid. They weren't going to be there egging me on to shoot, stab, run somebody over. You get that.
Is that because your group of friends, they knew like, yo, you got goals, you got dreams.
Yeah,
we can see you're successful. Let's get
that. But they also cared about me. Because they knew what the consequences could be. The third thing is, to your point, the old heads or OGs, whatever you want to call them now, they didn't let us do stupid stuff, especially because we were athletes, because they made sure we weren't hanging on the corners out there doing dumb stuff. Get off the corner and go home. Unless we were standing out there joking around with them. They weren't trying to get us to do stuff. You drop this off, do that. They weren't.
Keep you in the mix.
Now you had some who wanted to be in there and eventually got in, but they knew who the good kids was. Like, yo, you shouldn't be here, and they would tell me, yo, go home. And then I think the fourth thing was because it was more of a community. Because when I grew up, I could do something around the corner, and before I got home, my parents knew. Before I got home, they knew what was going on, and now. If you hit somebody, you spank a kid, they call DHS. Back then, I got whooped. It was...
I called part of that.
Yeah, I got whooped. So I think those 4 things, I'm not saying whooping was the answer, but not having consequences have a long way to go.
That's even how I look at that now. Like, not to go off on this tangent about whoopings now. Like,
yeah, open the can of worms.
I'm grandma.
I'm glad she's not watching.
No. Now that I'm older and I look back at them, I feel like some of them probably were deserved. But then, like, in the grand scheme of things, I don't feel like it was just like this whooping and it was just like, go ahead. It was conversations, we talked, and I understood greatly, like, choices and consequences. Like, the older I got, it's like, yo, these consequences could be a lot more intense than, like, these whoopings, man. Like, I could die. I could go to prison. Like, you know what I mean? Life could have just been drastically different or altered. It's, again, choices and consequences.
But think how crazy it is how those chances have drastically increased. Those same 2 things you said from when you were growing up, and now the third part of this that people understand is, and this is not all, so I know I'm going to get text messages and emails, but now you got to worry about the police too.
Yeah.
It's threefold. And I think people don't understand. Like, and I remember years ago, I went to speak at a class in the university, and a good friend of mine was a professor, and they were talking about prison was a modern day slavery. And I remember, I was the nay voice because my thing was, to me, the significant difference was if you committed a crime, you volunteered for prison. Slavery, they came and got you. You didn't have a choice. Mm-hmm. There's a distinct difference. Now, the end result, you can argue about once you get in there. But my thing, the biggest difference was, if they came to get me to slavery. But if I go out and murder somebody, I put myself on the mercy of a system, that I know is not fair.
Yeah.
But I remember having that discussion, and I think one of my arguments was what you just said. So how do you impose consequences? How do you deter people from making those excuses? Mm-hmm. How do you deter people from making those bad choices if there's going to be, if I know I can rob 15 stores and I'm going to keep going to risk, I'm going to keep robbing 15 stores. Yeah. And some people still do it. And that was the argument. But now if you fast forward, you got people now not afraid of the consequences.
Yeah.
You got people, when I was growing up, you didn't want to go to jail. You didn't want to get arrested. Now people are not afraid of those things anymore. You got people not afraid of dying. And I think a lot of it is because the mindset early on, because they read the clippings, I'm not worth anything. My life is not worth anything.
Life expectancy, they tell you that it's 21.
Or when I was growing up, 1 out of every 3 African American males is going to go to prison. That was just that's the stat you heard all the time.
When I say like kind of growing up, I don't know. We've never talked about this, but like people, circles, friends, you hear that.
Yeah.
Like people saying like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna be allowed till 25. Like thank God I'm
Yeah.
25.
I hear it all the time.
25.
18. Now people say I'm lucky if I make it to 18.
Well,
that's why you see a lot of kids not worried about graduating high school.
Well, let me ask this. This is kind of like on topic here.
I just love life.
Do y'all think, speaking of life, the value for a black man's life from one another, like, do you think that has increased or decreased?
Well, I think. See, I don't think it's either. I think what you see now is, and I know I'm opening up a can of worms. Is social media now? Is you hear it all the time. It was happening back in the day. It just wasn't. You didn't know about it. Yeah. Like even the racism, it was occurring. Black people were getting shot by cops and mistreated by cops for decades and centuries. The difference now is everybody's filming it. The difference now is right away versus it took 6 weeks to get in the newspaper, or you heard on the radio, or by the time it hit the news, it's just everything is so instant now. So I think that has done it. But I do think I've heard people say this, and I totally disagree with this. Well, if, for instance, when a Caucasian police officer kills an African American, and the first defense is, well, black on black crime. I've heard black people say that. Yeah. That's not exactly adding value to our life either. When black people start arguing, and to me, my comeback is, even with Christians, murder is murder. It's wrong. I don't care who does it. And just because somebody does it over here doesn't mean it's right over there. Yeah. But I think, to your point, society-wise, I think our value has gone down. I think in our community, the numbers, I think now because of social media, and you can get a gun a whole lot easier. Mm-hmm. And you got to remember, you're talking about automatic weapons now versus single shot guns, back in the day. So I think there's so many factors that factor into it. But I also think, we got the conference coming up about Choose Life. It's up to each individual to determine what their value is.
And that's what I was kind of going to be my question. Like, that certainly is, I guess, a heavy burden on, our mindset, just black men's mindset. And, we were bringing up just kind of how sometimes people feel that need or energy to do that. It's just all these kind of external factors that are still out here that kind of, I don't want to say drive, but, it definitely kind of leads people to, it fuels it. It leads people to believe that there's no options, there's no way out. And, and just kind of, again, to bring it back to when you live and think of that mindset, you only living for 18 to 25. But you know what I mean? Then why would you care about your life or anything else?
But it also, you're talking about the school to prison pipeline. That is $1 billion industry in this country. That's another reason why you don't see people in a rush to kind of rectify that. Because they need more programs in school. They need more character education, more integrity. You need more social programs. You need to help people understand they have value. I don't care. You can be a 4.0 student, but if you don't value life, it don't matter. You're just another smart to end up in prison or dead. So I think you got to have a healthy balance. And even, when it comes to the church, and when I mean church, I'm not saying, I know there's some churches doing it, but overall as an organization, the church has to do a better job of supplying what they're not getting at home. We have to stop saying it should be happening at home, because we know it's not happening at home. I got a front row seat.
It's actually
so we have to start being proactive, not to cut you off. We got to start doing stuff, teaching you have value, teaching that your life matters. Teaching that you were created not to be in some 4x4 cell with somebody telling you what to do all the time. Teaching people not to have 15 kids that you don't care about and go still doing your thing. We got to stop assuming that people learn it, because they're not.
You got to meet people where they are.
Yeah, that's the other part. Yeah,
because just kind of taking to what I've seen you do, and just kind of growing up and being a part of, it's like taking it to the streets, like being there. We didn't have social media, we didn't have phones, so we was able to kind of. You told that story before about being out there and playing basketball with people, being relational, and being able to connect on that aspect in that regard. I think kind of making it more relatable to today, like using a presence on social media. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it ain't always got to be kind of, per se, the gospel. You kind of can meet them where they are. Like we were talking about basketball, but then you can incorporate faith in some type of regard in that way.
But think back to when you were growing up, and how many kids would be in front of the house playing basketball. Yeah. Man, you think I didn't know they cursed and do all that stuff? They didn't do it here, but I knew they had that vocabulary. I knew it. But every last one of them, it was a how you don't. I mean, so you can share the gospel without sending people to hell.
Right.
You can, just by the way you live your life. I still remember the young man, I'm not going to say his name, who remember we were coming from a basketball game, we were talking about going to breakfast, and he was like, man, my father never took me to breakfast. And he ended up going to breakfast the next day. So and he saw that relationship, man. And after that, he started calling me Pop. So I think you can share the gospel, just by living your life a certain way. It's not always sending people to hell, and Jesus didn't preach. Jesus, everybody came across. Yeah, sometimes he just healed people. And I think we have to get back to that. And again, it goes back to a mindset. You're not going to change somebody's mind by cursing them out. You're not going to change. And I was watching something yesterday by a certain pastor. I'm not going to say his name because people are going to get all upset. And I'm probably going to get a little trouble because I'm agree with what he said. He said that the church is so caught up in Roe versus Wade right now, and in gay marriage, that they're forgetting to be the church. They're forgetting to be the church. They so hung up on those two issues, but nobody's dealing with hunger. Nobody's dealing with the racism people. Nobody's dealing with voters' rights. Nobody's dealing with, okay, what do we do with these people when they have these babies?
Everyday issues that these people have.
But it's a mindset because a lot of Christians are taught, those two issues are the most two important things in the world. Jesus wasn't a two-issue person.
Right.
He wasn't. Jesus dealt with all the issues.
I'm gonna get back to those things.
Yeah, he dealt with all the issues.
Hold on to that leprosy.
But I think, because that's not important right now because we got adulteries over it. So I think we have to get back to help people change their mindset. And how you change their mindset is through awareness and education and exposure. It's not through brainwash. It's not beating people over the head. It's not telling people, you're going to hell. Even people who, I deal with some kids, man, and some of them work my nerves because I know where they're going to end up at unless they change. But they're not going to change if I'm telling you're wrong. Your parents are wrong for teaching you that. That's not going to change them. I got to just be.
Right. And I think that is kind of an important element that I certainly want to kind of dig into a little bit more, maybe find out where other ways. You already said that, like just having programs and stuff like that. But like a big part of changing that mindset is like if you can't necessarily take everybody out of their environment, you know what that is. Like how do we get more people in there to kind of show them at least a different or better way?
This is so easy. It's hard, but it's easy. And just think about Dana. You just gotta love him. We make this so complicated. It's one thing about Dana, man, that he just loves people. So the people who really didn't maybe like what he stood for, they loved him because of the way he treated them. Yeah. They saw what he was. And
it was just like he didn't want anything in return.
Nope.
It was just genuine, like, yo, how are you? Like, you good?
I'm not gonna compromise who I am and what I believe, but to your point, I'm gonna meet you where you are.
And even if we disagree, like it's a way to do that.
I'm gonna love you. And I think that is one of the key things that we have to learn to do better. We got to stop saying, because first of all, none of us are exactly alike. We have to stop saying, if you're not like me, I can't, I can't, I disagree.
It's cool to be different.
We can't agree to disagree. Yeah. Well, you know what? And I tell people, if you go back and read your Bible, those 12 disciples were totally different.
Yeah.
They were totally different. And let me tell you, Jesus knew Judas was a traitor and he still treated them like everybody else. He didn't treat them like a dog. So I think we have to do a better job, in the church, because the church should be leading by example. And I think outside the church, we got to act the same way we act inside the church on Sundays. Mm-hmm. There's kids who drive me crazy. I say it again, but you know what? When I see them, they glad to see me. Hey, what's up, Mr. Bender? What's going on, man? We had those conversations. Yeah. And there's it was a little girl who was gay, and every time she saw me, she kept telling me, because she kept trying to get a rise out of me, because she knew I was a Christian. Every day she saw me, 12 years old, every day she saw me. I'm gay. She started the conversation off, I'm gay. I like girls. I like girls. and then one day she just walked up to me, she looked at me, and she hugged me. She hugged me, and she was like, you know what? Remember I came and I asked you because she said you're sturdy. Remember I asked you what that meant because I had no idea what that meant. Yeah, I had no idea what that meant. I was like, what? I didn't know if I was being insulted or what.
It's getting out of control now.
But I'm just saying, I didn't know if I was, and I said, let me go ask my kids about this. But I think that's what you do. And see, love wears people down. Mm-hmm. Love at least makes people stop to think about, well, man, everybody told me I'm this, I'm that, but Chris and Devin, they still treat me the same way. Yeah. And I think it sounds easier than it really is because people are just not built that way.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to begin to put the same work in because that's how you change somebody's mindset, not by beating them over the head, not by telling them the way they're living is wrong. Because you said it earlier, if everybody in my environment is doing this, that's my norm.
So, and that's kind of one thing I wanted to kind of go in on and touch upon, because it certainly is tied to or related to just people and having people around you, appropriate people, whether that's kind of from a mentor, older perspective. But I'm like kind of more want to focus on like who you have around you. I think kind of the example that you just referenced or said was the 12 disciples and how none of them thought the same. You know what I mean? People think that there's this idea out here that your friend group, y'all all got to be alike.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to touch upon like, why do you think it's important to have people that think differently versus, what happens when you have people around you that think all the same?
Well, I go back to when the disciples were in the boat going to the other side. And I just used an example the other night. They were doing what Jesus told them to do. Jesus said, go to the other side. They ended up in the storm. Jesus walking on water. The only one who got out of the boat to go to them was Peter. The other 11 didn't get out the boat. They were like, yo, I'm safer in the boat.
So,
and I say it because you would think that's Jesus. The Christian would say, I'm safer with him than I am in the boat. And I say it because that's why it's important to have the right people around you, because you want people that's going to encourage you to get out of the boat, to try something different, not just stay in the boat because of safety in the boat. And I think when you have the wrong people around you, you stay in the boat. You don't go to where you need to be going. And we were talking about this the other night. And I think too many times we get comfortable around a group of people because they affirm who we are because we think the same way. It's like, I'm going to ask you a question because I know you're going to agree with me. I'm not going to ask Chris because Chris is going to tell me the truth. And even in my wrongness, it's the same thing. A lot of marriages, when I sit down, I talk to counsel people, they get along fine when somebody's affirming somebody in their craziness. But the minute somebody speaks up and says, yo, we shouldn't be doing this, oh, you changed, you different now, or who you think you are. Nah, when you agree with me in my stupidness, my stupidness is cool. But the minute you challenge me for being like that, I think that's why you gotta have people around you, who are going to say, you know what, Devin, that's wrong. I love you, brother, but that's wrong. Chris, I love you, brother, but that's wrong. We had those conversations. I'll randomly, because Chris is starting to do the same thing, I'll randomly text y'all, say, yo, what kind of dad was I? What's going on in our relationship right now? You got to give people the power, to say, hey, this is what I really feel. This is what I really think. And the one thing about Dana's death that haunts me, and I was talking about this yesterday with somebody else and then with your mom and dad, is that it reminds me, man, that, tomorrow's not guaranteed. So while you allow people to influence you to do stupid stuff, the last thing you say or do may be the last thing you say or do. Right. So you got to make sure you got folk around you, man, who are going to not just support you, but also going to say, I correct you,
challenge you,
right. Yeah, and challenge you to be better. And my last statement is, I never thought I would ever Snoop Dogg. Chris is laughing.
Because you love that story.
Because I'm watching this thing with Snoop, and I don't even know why I stopped. I saw him and I stopped, and it's almost like he's kind of mesmerizing when because the way he talks and stuff, and it's like, and he's 50-something years old, he still acts the same way. I mean, he's still, most guys get old and it kind of plays out, but he still kind of has that coolness about him. But he talked about the same thing, how that whole the records, the rappers were fighting and everything, and he had to make a decision. And all his friends was challenging. Tupac and them were challenging him, saying, you wrong. You should be against them. You should be against them. He was like, nah, that's not right. Mm-hmm. He said, that's my man.
Right.
He said, I don't see him as competition. I see him as somebody that's going to make me better because, that beat he just dropped, I got to be better than that now. Yeah. And I think
Iron sharpens iron. I've been hearing that a lot.
Yeah. Gosh, I was going to say that, but I was kind of cut y'all a break. But let me ask you, so what about in your generation? Why is it so difficult for people in your generation, to leave that behind, to leave that mentality back where they came from? It's like they got to carry it everywhere they go, whether it's NFL, whether it's, how many people moved out here to Cheltenham from the city and they still had the same mentality.
Act crazy.
Because it's familiar. I mean,
all right.
Or just you're raised on it.
Yeah, you're used to acting a certain way. It's easier to keep acting that way.
But I don't know.
It's glorified. It is. This is a kind of a loaded question, I feel like, to be because this can go a number of ways.
I'm just curious.
I'll just say, all right, so let's say, all right, growing up, like when you young, like, and you see, as a male, you see what type of males that females are supposedly attracted to. I think that's certainly an influence. Like, and not even necessarily always directly in how you act, but certainly what you need to have or attain sometimes, or looked or perceived a certain way. Whether that's amongst other females or amongst your peers. It's like a level of respect. And like, think about, not even if we're not even talking about, like, from right now, we talking about street stuff, but like from another angle, think about sports, athletes. It's a hierarchy. Mm-hmm. Like, people generally do things because it makes them appear a certain way.
But if I was a kid growing up, now in this day and age, I'm a Steph Curry fan though. But I'm a Steph Curry fan because he's making money, but he ain't out here fucking it out. Yeah. I'm a LeBron James fan, and neither one of them are punks. It's not like they get. It's not like they. Be great at but it. I'm just saying, it's not like they're on the court, people punking them, and those guys. They got a little nastiness to them.
I like to say, if he wasn't playing basketball, I don't know where he'd be.
I mean, a lot of these kids will rather be.
You think he's gonna be knocking
down? A lot of these kids would rather be like a little Dirk.
You're right off.
A lot of these kids would rather be like a little Dirk or like a 21 Savage rather than like a Steph Curry,
Yeah, but why? I'm not disagreeing with you, but it's like how do we get that shift? Is it parenting? Is it is it they're being influenced by the culture? We talk about that a lot.
Image or appearance of almost like coming off soft. I think like that's really how I feel about it. I don't know.
Because somebody told me that the other day.
Think about Russell Wilson.
Somebody told me the other day.
Think about Russell Wilson.
That I was trying to keep it away. You're like, right, exactly. That's a perfect example. You get perceived as soft, and I think, I don't know, it's almost like a trigger in the middle. Almost, you don't want that perception.
But you know what? I am soft because I don't have to be like that anymore. I don't live in the community where I gotta fight all the time or people. So I don't have to be like that anymore.
That's the thing we're talking. What I just said is perception.
So I'm okay with that.
You have to have the knowledge and understanding that, like, and feel strength in the decision that you make not to.
But I think it's safe to say, had it not changed, we wouldn't be sitting. We'll be sitting there now.
Yeah.
But it's like you guys said earlier. You gotta have people around you that are fine with you changing, that are okay with it, rather than people that are going to judge you like, oh, you're changing up. Like, why are you changing up? You should be acting like this. And I feel like once you have all those people in your head, it makes it easier to revert back to, what you know, rather than change.
3 words.
Good point.
Cut them loose. I think it's like an analogy I use when I'm working with guys. Life is like a 12-round fight. In the first round, you come out, you just feeling each other. Second round, you come out, man, you get hit, knock the snot out of you. Who you want in the corner? You want the guy in the corner that's going to say, come on, this is what we got to do to get better? Or the guy says, man, I don't know how he ain't knock you out. I'd have been knocked out. That must have hurt. Yeah. So who's in your corner? You got to figure out who's in your corner, man. And you got to get the right people in your corner. That's a personal decision. Nobody can do that for you. That's not a crowd thing. And it means some relationships got to change. That's just the reality of it all. Some relationships when we used to play softball. Yeah. And we used to go out there and certain guys was talking about the same conversation from when we were teenagers. Every time we went out there, the same exact conversation. They haven't moved out of that space mentally. Now, you're talking about 30 years later. And nobody can move them. They got to make the conscious decision that, life is more than me pitching a no-hitter when we were 16 years old, or me, getting all these hits. You got to get that in your head. And it's the same thing with the violence thing. At some point, you got to say, I no longer have to act like that because my environment does not dictate me to act like that.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is kind of just being able to be uncomfortable, and just feel comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it's certainly going to be different. It's not going to be easy. In terms of just saying you could just flip a switch and you know what, I'm gonna change my mindset tomorrow. I think and it's gonna be easy or super easy. Because I'm just thinking of situations maybe previously, myself or other people, where it's just it's easy to just go back to what or what you think, in terms of I need to defend myself. I gotta look like this.
Yeah, but I look at myself
a lot easier now. It's easier.
I think, and I said this in our men's group on Monday. I think being a Christian, African-American, husband, father is one of the hardest things to do now, because you get it from so many different angles. And the expectation is people expect you to be a certain way, and a lot of times there's a misconception. People think because you're a Christian that they can just walk over you and you're not supposed to respond. And it's a thin line, because you do respond, but you can't be out here, and X talked about it, last week, but it is a tough job. It's hard. It's extremely difficult. But, for me, and this is for everybody, got to find their own. My relationship with Christ is more important than any other relationship. So, I'm not going to, my thing is like, I signed up for this. This is what I'm going to do. I'm doing it all the way. And it requires that sometimes I got to turn the other cheek. It requires that I don't respond to everything. It doesn't mean like Jesus wasn't a punk. He turned the tables over when they did stuff against, it wasn't like, people think he was this punk, what's he? He wasn't. Mm-hmm. But he understood, and you said it, there's a time and a place when I have to do that. And I think we have to understand, for me, from my perspective, the calling of my life is greater than anything somebody thinks about me, anything somebody can talk me into. What I'm about to say next. My family, is God, and my family is next. Yeah. I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize that. I'm not going to do anything, perhaps to give you guys a bad example of what a godly man should look like. So you got to have those things inside you, man. And what are you pursuing? What are you trying to be? What are you trying to do? And I think there's such an identity crisis right now in this country that people don't know. So their mind is, the craziness in their mind is still ruling. Yeah. Like, the football play, dude, you're a millionaire, man. Right. First of all, why are you out there arguing? First of all, I've been thinking like somebody could shoot me.
Yeah, like what?
Yeah, and why? And then you done played in a Super Bowl, and you out there arguing about a Pop Warner football game.
Yeah.
And then you killed somebody, your brother mentality, and your brother. You can say what you want to say, but your brother's mentality.
Right.
So why is your brother carrying a gun to the game in the first place, to a Pop Warner football game? So there's so many things wrong with that story. But it came down to, he didn't know who he was. He still acted like he was back in the hood. Mm-hmm. I got this rep that I got to protect. And that was more important to him than, who he was and his station in life. See, to me, I would never jeopardize that. My first thing is always, how am I representing? I'm not perfect. I screw up sometimes. My next thing, I'm not going to put my family in danger. I'm not going to put my family in danger because of my ego or my pride.
Yeah. I feel like what's key, kind of bringing all that together, it's just like finding and being secure in yourself.
Yeah.
Like it certainly starts there with changing your mindset. And being able to kind of block some of that outside noise, you got to be able to have some discernment and be like, you know what, even if these people look at me or perceive me to be this, I'm not that, those are their perceptions. Again, you have to have some type of strength and find that within yourself.
Well, as an athlete, and I use the UDC as the perfect example. Mm-hmm. Not UDC, the school in
got a lot of buckets, so I'm like, which one?
No, the school we played is the HBCU. I can't think of it outside of Baltimore. Bowie. That was a perfect example. When you went to play at Bowie, you had two choices. You could be like everybody else on your team, like the deer in the headlights, or you could rise to the occasion. But you adjusted because you played a different way. You had an edge that you didn't have everywhere else. You got the edge you got from 27 Clearfield, not the Shellingham man. So but you didn't do it in such a way where you out there losing your head and thugging out. And that's the same thing in life. You have to figure out how to negotiate this thing. And you find your own lane. You got to find it. But that's how you respond. Or the same thing when you went to, you playing volleyball in different environments, man, and you adjust to the environment, but you don't go over the top.
Right. Yeah. It's like kind of even related to the sports team, like. Kind of that reference of somebody, you can say somebody's a dog, you know what I mean? Sometimes you may say Pat Bev is a dog and he acts in very different ways, ferocious, he loud, but there's like, I always kind of I'm thinking of that video with Matt Barnes and Kobe Bryant, where Kobe,
the ball,
he was just composed.
And he just kept looking at him.
Right.
And
mindset, mentality. Could have got mad. Like, why are you fletching the ball in my face? Break character.
As I watched Kobe, and it was funny because when people ask him about that, Like, yo, I know I can defend myself.
That's
now, if he would have hit me, it would have been a difference. He said, yo, if he would have hit me with the ball, it would have been a different scenario.
Yeah.
But he didn't hit me. So what was I going to be afraid of?
You know what I mean? But that's like somebody that I look at as a leader, somebody that you would follow and like,
but he knew who he was.
He ain't flinch.
He knew who he was. It's the same thing with Michael Jordan. You can say what you want to say about Michael Jordan, but he knew who he was. He knew who he was. So what people were talking about him, man, and because I was reading something the other day that he was talking about how people were giving him, and I didn't know this at the time, people were giving him a hard time because they, Larry Bird was calling him Black Jesus.
Yeah.
And he was like, he couldn't even go to church in his own town now. But
you mean Jesus is white?
But when he talked about that was but he didn't he still was Mike.
Yeah.
He didn't go out there like, man, I'm worrying about people. Let me go tell Larry Bird, don't call me that anymore.
I gotta hide. I gotta go on Twitter.
And I think that's the mentality people no longer have. Look at Larry Bird. Larry Bird, you couldn't tell me when he was playing that he wasn't a redneck. And now that I hear the stories and things about, he was far from it.
Yeah.
He just understood who he was, and he wasn't going to change that to fit the narrative of what an NBA superstar should look like.
Mm-hmm.
This is who I am.
They probably picked up on that a little bit of marketing too.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. Come watch this city boy against the red.
Yeah. But he did. But there's a bunch of guys. You were laughing. We were at the Basketball Hall of Fame. Clyde Frazier, the way he dressed. Yeah. Remember y'all were cracking on Chris still shaking his head. Steve Harvey. But he knew who he was.
Yeah, the confidence.
I think
people be having this kind of fake confidence today, man.
Well, I don't know what him it was. I don't think what him was. Clyde. I mean, Walt Frazier was just. I mean, he played that same way. He was a different basketball player.
I wasn't saying that just.
I know what you
but
mean.
I was just saying like to the time because people like to mask and pretend and think that they have confidence and they posted stuff online for validation. You know what I mean? They waiting for somebody to.
It's like the dude.
All it takes is a bad comment to.
It's like the dude who get in the fight because you can hold him back.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me go. Let me go
all the time.
Yeah. But what I think to bring it back home as we get down, we got 12 minutes. But I think it's important though that we get back to that it is. But you got to know who you are, and I think it starts with one. Most people don't know who they are because they don't have a vision. They just live day by day. And so whatever happens, if I see this on TV, I want that. If I see this on the news, they just do. They go day by day. Most people have no clue or what their purpose is or what the vision is. And if you don't know what your purpose is and you don't have a vision, you're not going to have. How do you value yourself? Because you think you're just like everybody else. And the world has conditioned you to believe, not you per se, but to believe. I go with this in my men's group. It's okay to celebrate yourself. All this arrogance and all this stuff that people say, no.
Celebrate nothing.
Rich people go out and buy themselves a yacht. They'll go out and buy them a Rolex or something to celebrate themselves. But yet when people do it...
I'm going to post myself on IG.
But I'm just saying, it's okay to celebrate yourself. I'm not saying go crazy about it, but it's okay to say, man, I accomplished that. I celebrate myself every day. I enjoy the life I have. I thank God every day. I'm grateful for what I have. Because I know...
Crazy amount of arrogance out here,
No,
though.
but some people... But I mean, it's borderline. See, when you poor, it's funny. When you poor is arrogance, but when you're rich, it's eccentric.
That's so true.
Yeah, when you're poor, you are arrogant. Yeah, but when you're rich, he's eccentric. So I mean, you can be. I mean, that's another thing. I look at today's superstars versus the older superstars. Like, now they talk trash, but it was quietly. Mm-hmm. When you see the replays, man, today they talking. You can say what you want to say, but they say it out loud.
Yeah. They go on Twitter.
Yeah, even during the course of the game, they not whispering like now. You look at the old tapes and they tell you what somebody whispered to them. So I just,
mic'd up now.
Yeah, so I'm just saying. I think and after the game they cool.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's arrogant. I think they have confidence in their ability, and they maximize their potential, and they don't have a problem letting people know. You were cracking jokes, but it's like Steph Curry. I can see Steph Curry's an accountant with that same. I just balance the books. I mean, he ain't saying splash, but
He'd be a great car salesman.
Yeah. So I think, but that's it. But if you don't know who you are, how do you value yourself? Because if I don't know who I am, I'm always looking around comparing myself to somebody else. Man, why Devin have that? Man, why I saw all these nice things happen to Devin and Chris? Like I hear it all the time, man, about when people look at our family. Everybody, it ain't perfect. We got trials and tribulations like everybody. We just ain't posting on Facebook. But we have enough respect and love for one another that we don't disrespect people. Like I tell people all the time, yo, before you say anything, think about how much you value the relationship. Before you do anything, think about how much you value the relationship. Because if you value it, you don't say crazy stuff. You don't do crazy stuff. But I think too many people out here, they don't value themselves, man. So how am I going to respect you if I don't respect me?
Well, I mean, a little bit of ego sometimes get in the way.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you can't back down, or you need to kind of prove yourself or do something. Like, yeah.
Yeah, but are you the man if you're dead? What did the ex say last week? If he got shot and killed, what is he going to be to his family then? You think the guy that shoots you says, "Oh, he was all right, he was the man." No, you the only one with that mentality, and you dead. Now your family got to fend for themselves. Your mama got to bury you. Your brothers and sisters got to mourn you. That's just dumb. I never heard anybody says, "Yeah, man, he got shot, but he was the man." No.
Yeah, that's actually kind of crazy point too, because I did see this social media guy, like just
no,
I told you about that. Like he out here talking crazy online, telling people
come find me,
come pull up, sending his location, and somebody actually pulled up on him. Like again, I don't understand.
There's too many stories like that.
It's way too many stories like that, and it's just like
people can find you easily now.
I think
it's too easy.
I always talk about it, but yeah, social media is definitely influential and like kind of and it's impacting people in regards to how they make decisions out here.
And a curse, huh?
But it goes back because if you don't know who you are, you can pretend to be anybody you want to be on social media.
And that's the thing too. People be out here faking. That's a whole nother show, though.
Like the catfish. Oh,
yeah, people be out here faking their life.
Yeah, but I think you have to love yourself enough to want the best for yourself.
Mm.
And I think that's the attitude. Like I tell people all the time. I would never ever consider suicide because I love me too much. Mm. I do. I'm not saying I'm perfect, and some people says, "Well, you stuck," or you call it whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But I love me so much, and I love God so much. There's nothing's going to happen to me today that I can't overcome. Yeah. And I've been in some situations where, it was my health.
And then even the people around you, though, too, like how that impacts is drastically the people around you. Yeah. But kind of to bring things home, like, where would you suggest people start if they are looking to change their mindset?
Look in the mirror. I think one, you have to you got to look in the mirror. You got to be honest with yourself. I think too many times we try to change and we're not honest with what we need to change, which translates to it's impossible to change. If I'm a liar and I don't want to admit I'm a liar, I'm never going to stop lying. Just the bottom. That's like I'm eating all the time and I wonder why I'm gaining weight, but I'm not going to stop eating because I'm blaming everything else. Mm. Oh man, my nerve. Yeah, but So I think we got to be honest with yourself. I think too, you got to find somebody to hold you accountable. You got to have somebody in your life, man, that's going to say, yo, man, that's wrong. That doesn't make sense. And if you're emotional, you got to have somebody who understands that. Not call you stupid, not, smacking you, punching you. I need you to chill for a minute. I need you to sit down for a second. I think the third thing is folk need to figure out who they are, man, and not be defined by society, not be defined by, because the media says you should act like this, because somebody says, some rich person who makes a lot of money off you say this is the way you should look, and you pour his dirt and you buying stuff to look like that person, thinking that's going to make you, because you don't know who you are. Mm-hmm. I think the fourth thing is, and this is just my humble opinion is, you got to believe in God, man. I think too many times people don't believe in God, and that if you don't believe in something or the source that created you, come on, man. I mean, do you think you're self-sufficient? And I think that's the problem right now. Too many people think they're self-sufficient. I did it my own self. I pulled myself on a bootstrap. All those sayings, the neat little sayings we have. It's funny because this morning in my devotion I wrote, I have to decrease so Christ can increase. Most of us don't decrease because we don't let go because we want to control our own lives. I want to be in charge of this thing, man. On Sunday, I'm cool. I'm decreasing, but Monday through Saturday, I'm in charge, man. I'm making all my decisions, and when you live your life like that with no accountability, who's there to check you when you make a bad decision? Mm-hmm. Who's there to hold you accountable? And if you believe you at the beginning and the end, I don't know what to tell you, because your ego and pride is going to be all over the place, man. And I think our friends, man, if you're really my friend, you're going to tell me when I'm doing something wrong. If you're really my friend, you're not going to sit there and watch me crash and burn and say, I knew that was going to happen. I think we got to get back to those days, man. I think as parents, we got to invest time in our kids and helping them discover who they are, not making them who we want them to be, but help them discover who they are and give them the freedom to grow into who they are. The two of you and your sister are 3 totally different people, successful in your own right. We have to do that, man. And, I think as a society, we got to stop saying that it should be happening at home when we realize it's not happening at home.
Yeah. So I feel like I kind of agree with all of those things there. Just to kind of add one last thing, I'm going to say just read.
Yeah,
I just think
be a learner. Yeah,
be a learner.
True.
That will surprisingly change your life. I feel like, it doesn't matter where you start, how you start, just like read, and then the mind is going to start to expand itself, and then that kind of makes all of these other things and areas, I feel like, a little bit easier to do.
I agree 200%.
So I mean, that's something that I think we don't stress enough, like just how important it is to just read and just be a forever learner, like outside of school, like continue to just expand and grow your mind, learn new things. There's people who have been through what you've been through, and a lot of times some of that stuff, it might be in a book. Like if you don't know somebody that you feel like is around you in that circle, like there's something out there that's probably in the book. Like,
it's funny because I reread a lot of books.
Yeah,
and I'll go back.
You feel it,
and
different.
I'll go back and I read and I get something different every time. Yeah. I'll go back and I'll see where I highlighted something before, and I'll keep reading. Like, man, I missed that. Now I need to highlight this too. So reading, and not just read it one time, but go back over stuff, man. Familiarize yourself with it, because when you, and it's true. When you put stuff in, that's what comes out. Mm-hmm. If you put garbage in, garbage comes out. If I'm sitting down counseling somebody and they talking about they depressed, the first thing I ask them is, what do? You can't get up, look at Facebook, watching the news. Yeah, everything you're doing is making you depressed. Yeah. All your friends is talking about is crime and murder and mayhem, and gossiping. That's why you're depressed. Yeah. So I think, changing your mindset as we go full circle, to your point, is key, is what you put in.
Yeah. And then even if you can't travel, man, get in a book. Take yourself somewhere mentally. Like, that helps too.
It opens your imagination.
It really does. Open your imagination. Helps with critical thinking. Like,
we're going to go over a little bit, but somebody said to me, well, why would you go to Boston? Why would you go to Boston?
I just had this
conversation. There's islands out there, so much to do. So I listened to him. I did. I sat there and I listened to him. So I said, well, let me give you a couple reasons why I went to Boston. The first reason I went to Boston is because my 2 sons took me. Because I just happened to mention one day that I wanted to go to the Basketball Hall of Fame, and they made it happen. I said, that's like one of the greatest gifts you could ever get. That demonstrates the relationship we have, just like this show. I said, the second thing is because Boston is a part of the United States of America. So why shouldn't you see as much of the country that you live in as you should? Yeah. Some of y'all have been to the Bahamas. I've been to the Bahamas. I only want to go back. We've been there 4 times. I don't want to see it anymore.
You ain't been to your neighboring state.
Yeah. you ain't been to New Jersey. You ain't been to Delaware.
You see Mount Rushmore.
Heck, you won't even know where the Army's in this. Yeah. So I think, and I told him, but the third reason to me that was equally important was because whether you like it or not, Boston's a part of the history of this country. Yeah. Just like we were in Charleston, and Charleston is a part of it. We did Charleston, South Carolina. People say, "Oh man, you went to Charleston?" Yeah, I went to Charleston, and I learned a lot when I was in Charleston.
To that point too, where like this country is filled with so much history all over the place, and we talk about it a lot. We talk about it a lot, but nobody ever goes to actually physically be in these places and appreciate it and take it in, like. Because nobody would know, like, when people say Boston, they automatically assume racism.
Like we did.
But there's historically black places there that you can still go and enjoy.
What was the trail? The slave trail. I can't think of the name for it.
Oh, it was like Slave Port or something like that?
The trail that went the length of Boston. So, I mean, I didn't know that. I had no idea. Right. You know, because Boston, when you hear Boston, you think of the Boston Celtics, you think of racism.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you do. And then I had no idea that all those black players that played for Boston are highly revered in Boston. They love them in Boston.
I think I kind of knew that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. So there's the things that you can learn, man, from like.
Putting yourself in different
Boston
places.
Tea Party. When I actually saw when I'm in my mind, I think Boston Tea Party. I think there's a whole big body of water, man. That little small port. I'm thinking to myself, like, yo, we could have swam out there and
I made a big deal out of this.
Yeah. But that's history. The same thing in Charleston. I didn't know Charleston was one of the largest slave ports in this country. I didn't know that. I had no idea. So I say that because, and you know what? That's something I can pass on to Mackenzie.
Mindset, man.
I'm gonna make sure Mackenzie is exposed to the same stuff. Like there's people you've been to Jamaica, you've been to Bermuda, but you don't even know when Independence Hall is.
Yeah, or like I said, seeing anything in relation to your quote unquote history that you so much talk about.
So I'm okay with it, man. But I just think it's funny, or people says, oh man, you go on vacation with your kid, yeah. I said, they took me. We had a great time. I said, matter of fact, I was totally out of character, man. I was up late at night. We've been watching different things on TV. Yeah. I said, we didn't go down there and just go to church and it's, somebody like, oh, they had you out there clubbing. No, I wasn't clubbing. I said, I said, we had a good time though. I said, and it wasn't deep in pies. We just had a great time just being together. And he was like, really? I said, yeah. And I said, guess what? There's not many people can say they can go with their grown kids.
Yeah. And have a good time.
But people think it's weird.
Why? I don't understand. That's a whole nother episode mindset, man.
Like, we got to close up. Yeah. But mindset, though. But this goes to the mindset. And I got to say this.
Family culture.
It's the same thing when people say, you hanging out with your kids. I said, yeah, we sure do.
Family culture. Yeah, we need to talk about that another day.
Have an open mind.
Because that's a whole other topic too. I think we could go in and talk about that for a while.
First of all, let me say this. I feel personally attacked because I told y'all last week I've never been to the Art Museum in Philadelphia.
And now you.
Well, I wasn't going to say that. You said it. I wasn't going to bring it up.
You was just saying it the whole time.
No, but I just think, and I was using that as an example. That we get so caught up thinking we have to leave the country.
Great church, though.
That we have to leave the country when there's plenty of stuff. Like I want to see the Grand Canyon. I want to see stuff like that. I want to expose, my grandson and stuff like that. Yeah. There's things that you want to do, man, that you don't have to leave the country. And I'm cool because I do leave the country. Don't get me wrong. Going to Mexico next year and Punta Cana and all that stuff.
We threw that out there. I want y'all to think I ain't going.
No, yeah, because I want people to understand. It ain't like we don't go anywhere. Yeah, you do. But I just think I still want to know what's in the United States.
Me too.
I still I had a ball just Fenway Park.
Yeah. I mean, goal of mine is I want to get to every state. So,
Avis posted something the other day that he was checking them off. He went to another state. He was like the different state, and I think that's pretty cool.
Trying to do that too.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool, man. So I think but we got to get out of that mindset to think that everything has to be outside the country to be a real vacation. Yeah. And we judge people on that. Man, why you always got to go? Like we went down to Destin, Florida, the Gulf of Florida. We had a ball down there. Mm-hmm. I had the same water on this side of golf that you get on the other side of golf. The same water. It wasn't nothing different.
Yeah.
I had white sand. You had white sand. I had palm trees. But people, we get this mentality, and it's a mindset that, we measure you by how far you go.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand. But
so anyway, y'all close.
I was going to say, that's a whole another episode.
We got two other shows we just talked about.
But, again, I think that's a great episode, Above Average Black Men, and hopefully that people got something they could take away out of this. And I think a lot of this is more so tied to if you want to elevate and be in a certain place in life, I think we hit so many different areas that you can start to look into and think about so that you can achieve these things. But again, thank you. Above Average Black Men.
Follow, subscribe, share. I want to stress
get those up.
The support.
No belt it then, man. You started with it. Well, we want to say, thank you so much for another episode of Above Average Black Men. We have a guest next week.
We do.
Yeah, so we have a guest next week. So we'll be back to our guest format next week. But we're always looking for guests.
Yeah.
We're always looking for guests. So if you're out there and you're doing something good in the community, you got a small business, you got a positive message, just hit us up, man. We'd love to have you on. But as Devin, he's
on Instagram, on Facebook,
yeah, say it again.
Above Average Black Men. That's A2BM. Hit us up, DM us, comment.
All righty. See you guys next week.
Peace.